An investor invests. That means when there's opportunity that knocks on the door, open the freaking door. Don't be so narrow-minded. At a young age, you can afford to get whipped around when it comes to your portfolio. As a younger investor, you have the long timeline. You can afford to enjoy the ebbs and flows of the market. Once you are older, it's not going to feel good to get whipped around. I think society is getting lazier. Most Americans don't like their job, and that probably extrapolates out to like a lot of people around the world not loving their job. But then go find something you want to do. There has never been an easier time to win than right freaking now, because everybody is so freaking weak to your left and to your right. You're going to be one of three types of people. You're going to make things happen, you're going to watch things happen, or you're going to be someone who says, what the heck just happened? You got to decide which person you are. I have plenty of people as well that always chime in. They're like, well, I have, kids and the wife and this and this. Okay, it's called prioritization. Sit down with them. Say, I want to make sure the family gets here.
In this conversation with Ari Gutman, we discussed the number one mistake that people make with dividends that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, why volatile and risky are not the same thing, and how confusing the two is keeping you out of the best opportunities, and why there has never been an easier time to build real wealth, even though most people are still making their own excuses as to why it's not. This is part one of the highlights from our conversation with Ari Gutman on our live show, Memes and Markets. Let's dive in.
What is going on? Welcome back to Memes and Markets. Keith, how are you, my man?
Today's the best day of my life, Ben. How you doing?
Today's a fantastic day of my life because we have a fantastic guest with us that I would love for you to introduce.
We've got Ari Gutman with us. Welcome, Ari. How
What's
are
up,
you?
Ari?
Well, you guys are doing fantastic, so I feel like I got to supercharge my level. I'm out of this world.
Amazing, man. Love it. Love it. Before we started, you said you were traveling right now. How's that going?
Oh, it's epic. I mean, talk about something out of this world. Fantastic, amazing. I'm currently live now from Malta, and in a few days I'll be in Vegas. So no complaints on my end.
Amazing. Awesome.
Fantastic. Ari, tell us a little bit. Welcome to everybody also in the chat. Welcome in. Ari, tell us a little bit about your background briefly so that we can understand where you're coming from as we come into this conversation.
Yeah, I'll give the elevator pitch to the best that I can, and as short as I can get to the whole pitch here. But essentially, I started off investing a little over a decade ago, quite the boring route with just the ETF, and that was a broad market fund. And then I jumped into dividend investing. As a dividend investor, I had a lot of fun getting the dividends on a monthly basis, but we could talk about why I deviated since then. It's been quite a journey, but that actually led me to start creating content on YouTube, which has been pretty epic journey in and of itself, just to help the average Joes and Janes who are out there. And the impetus for the channel was just to show people how easy it really is to make $100,000 and to be on that $100,000 journey, and then moreover financial freedom. That job, when I was working in Manhattan in asset management and real estate, I started the YouTube channel. All thanks and all credit to an ex-girlfriend. She's amazing to this day, so I want to just shout her out. I don't think she'd ever be watching something like this, but I owe her that. And one thing to the next, I got contacted by TipRanks. If anyone is familiar with TipRanks, very similar to Seeking Alpha and Investing.com, kind of the big three out there. So I joined TipRanks, and about a year or two after working with TipRanks, I decided to go full time for a brief stunt on YouTube, and then I got picked up by Wall Street, and I've since joined Wall Street, and that's what I've been doing now. Still making content, but very focused on a podcast that I run now, which is Masters of the Market, that is solely about the average Joes and the average Janes out there telling their stories. I find mine is a little boring, so I like to tell the stories of others.
Super cool, man. Super cool. Thanks for the breakdown there. So in this journey of hearing other people's stories, I kind of want to start off with like, what do you think is one of the craziest kind of like, I guess, claims to fame or stories around dividend investing and finding that financial freedom that you've discovered on your channel?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to share two things. First of all, the most epic story that I have ever encountered, there's been dozens upon dozens. I mean, I've been doing it for about a year and a half, 2 years. So I've heard a lot of stories every week, but one always comes to mind. And I am just, an advocate for no excuses, zero excuses. And there's one guy who I interviewed pretty early on. His name was Joe. I think his YouTube channel is Joe Dividends, if I'm not mistaken. But the funny story is, I actually meant to interview somebody else that had a similar channel with like Joe Dividends. So I emailed the wrong guy.
That's
And,
awesome.
and anyways, this guy pops on. I was like, wait, this is not the Joe Dividends I was looking for. But he had the most powerful story. So I think all things happen exactly the way that they need to. And I'm so happy I had him on, because this guy came in with the most powerful story. He was basically homeless, and he started working odds and end jobs. And not only that, he started donating blood plasma. And
Wow.
one thing to the next, this guy ends up slowly but surely investing. And then, as it takes time, pays to be patient, he becomes a millionaire. And that's not an overnight affair, but this guy went from nothing to literally something, and a whole heck of a lot of something. So that was a very powerful story. And in terms of my own journey, I stopped dividend investing some time ago. And I even stopped classifying myself as, like, that question people are like, what type of investor are you, Ben? What type of investor are you, Keith? I hate that question, because if you know anything about anything, to classify yourself and just stick to, say, dividend investing, and that's how you want to classify yourself, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. An investor invests. That means when there's opportunity that knocks on the door, open the freaking door, And so don't be so narrow-minded. And I think that's a lot of the times what we get stuck with, this narrow-minded vision of like, I'm this type of investor. We block out everything else. And what Masters of the Market helped me to do, because that led to me talking to, everybody under the sun. It started with average Joes and Janes. It led to Wall Street executives, CEOs, CIOs, hedge fund managers. And still the most powerful stories are the average Joes and Janes. But listening to everybody else's strategies, I was like, maybe that works. Maybe I should try that. Maybe I should do this. Anyways, I slowly but surely started to veer into growth investing. My portfolio went from like 40, 50 holdings down to, 40, and then 30, and then 20, and then 15, and then under 10 as it is now. And it's predominantly growth driven right now. But in that amount of time, 2-3 years, I went from hanging around, 100, 150, $200,000 to doubling that, and then some. So it's been quite a journey in that regard. And I want to thank everybody out there willing to tell their stories. I'm the best student that gets to listen to those stories and grow from them.
That's unreal. Yeah, I think there's a lot of tribalism around all sorts of specific routes to doing anything. And so people are very much like, this is the right way. No, this is the right way, when almost always it's a combination of all those things. So it's super cool to see the evolution of that. So how long have you been running the podcast for?
About 2 years. I always want to say like a year, but that's false. Time flew, and it's like
Totally.
2 years. Where did it go?
And so what was the inspiration behind starting that?
Yeah, great question. So there was a guy who was on YouTube for quite some time, and YouTube probably know him, Jason Fieber, if that name rings a bell. He dubbed himself as Mr. Free at 33. But I did not. I had no intentions of actually starting a podcast whatsoever. Like I said, when life happens, just dance with it. Rock and roll with it. Because I had this guy on the channel just for like a regular collaboration. Like, let's just chat and see where it goes. I saw in the comments people say, one after the next, wow, I never knew Jason's story. So I go, it's quite similar to like a millionaire next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people out there with these powerful stories. Let me share them. And I think that's arguably the most powerful route to go. First of all, listening to other people for the sake of learning, but moreover, people can't relate to Wall Street executives. I
No.
love Bill Ackman, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. I mean, you name them, the greats, Peter Lynch. But can we really relate to them? No. But the guy next door, or the woman next door who's like, I was homeless or in debt and then slowly climbed out of it and then, hit the 7-figure club. That's a relatable story.
Totally. Yeah, and that's needed so much right now because there's a lot of people who have just reached a state of doomerism where like they've fully written off, like, I'm done. If you're either rich or you're poor, you're stuck that way. And so I think sharing stories of very normal, everyday people achieving extraordinary things through just following a process and sticking to it is really, really powerful. I think it's needed more now more than ever, especially as gambling becomes more relevant and even people's approach to investing becomes a lot more like gambling. I think
Hmm.
spreading all the different routes towards accumulating wealth is super, super important.
Oh,
Yeah, man.
100%.
Talk to us a little bit about dividend investing and maybe compare it to other forms of investing. But like for someone who has no idea, right? We're coming to this with a clean slate. Hey, I'm young. I know that I need to start investing. People keep telling me that, but like, what do I actually do? Like, what are the different ways to think about growing your portfolio, especially when you're younger like that?
Yeah, like the 0 to 1. I think because there's so much content out there showing people's final destination, but it sounds like your show walks through the beginning. So I'd love to like take us through. If we were coming to you and I'm like, where do I start, Ari? I'd love for you to like take me there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal question. I was just on a tour last year with Blossom Social,
Mm.
and actually,
I,
this was a question
I
that
know
was
the
thrown
founder
to
of
me.
that. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, Max is the man. Max, Brandon, the whole team.
Yes.
Him, I'm going to see in Vegas. So shout out to all those guys. They're doing great work and building a young investment community. So I was a speaker last year for them, and I had a heck of a time. But this was a question that always came up, right? Like 0 to 1. Like, where do I start? How do I get involved in the magic of the market? And what I just first want to say is, like, I want everybody to just pump the brakes for a second. It's exciting. First of all, now more than ever, it's incredibly exciting. We have a lot of products. ETFs just overtook the amount of individual stocks that are on the market. That's crazy. That's over 4,000 ETFs, 90% of which are garbage, right? So you got to be aware of like what's going on. And then the other element to this is like, don't just jump in the market to jump in the market. Understand a couple of things first. One, why? Why? What is your why? What are you doing this whole thing for? Because I think we can fool ourselves and just like, yeah, I want to get rich. Okay, everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants to get rich, but like, what are your goals? What gets done in life is measured. So you have to have the goal first and foremost. And with the goal, then comes the strategy. So if you are, an early 20 something year old and you just like the idea of getting monthly dividends, yeah, while it's sexy and attractive and can be exciting, I was there, it will hold you back. And I actually would put a massive red flag up to say, hey, just because you want to receive monthly dividends, like that's not the reason to go dividend investing. The reason to be a dividend investor is because you're going to be a little bit more prudent as an investor. And perhaps you have less of a timeline on your hands and you don't have the ability to take on risk. Now, I also want to speak to risk for a hot second because what some people deem as risky, like take a tech oriented ETF that covers literally the entire tech sector. There's some popular ones out there. I'm sure everybody knows of them, but those aren't risky if you really think about it. They're volatile, but that doesn't make them risky. That makes the person who's then investing into them, you know, if you're going to jump into them, get ready to go on a roller coaster sometimes. Like I'm invested in a tech oriented ETF and I'm on a roller coaster. What am I doing on the downswing? I'm buying. Why? Because I have over decades worth of time to invest. Now, on the other end of this, if I were still dividend investing, guys, my portfolio would not be where it is today. It wouldn't even be nowhere close to 500,000. It would be probably still flirting with, 150, maybe. And I got some good friends out there who are dividend investors right now in their early 30s. And that's where they are, about half that, right? 125, 130 or so. And with so much time on our hands, we can explode our wealth going in the right direction with growth. So, I want to say have your goal in mind, get comfortable in the market. If it does mean dividend investing, because that's a very safe route for a couple of months to dabble, so be it. But I would still say, I mean, today with ETFs, just investing in the S&P, you're better off than trying to pick dividend stocks.
What exactly are dividends, and what is this concept of dividend investing? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the OG days. I feel like with what dividend investing like really was, right? It was just the notion of getting passive income. That was attractive to me when I first started, right? It's a very, like I said, sexy, attractive idea. You're going to get passive income. I'm not going to have to lift a finger and I'm going to just get money. That's amazing. That's what everybody's looking for. But here's the deal. When you are dividend investing for passive income, like I said, and that's the thing that attracts you, you're forgetting the long-term vision. And so what you really want, in my opinion, is, and anybody out there, you can feel free to roast me if you want. I mean, I love it, but if you're going to go for dividend investing as an early 20s, early 30s, even early 40s, something year old, you're risking future capital appreciation. And so I just want to caution you there. And so what are dividends in the first place? Let's dumb it down. Sesame Street simple. Let's you invest into a company. It's probably a pretty well-known dominant company. They have excess capital that they are not going to use. So instead of using that capital, say like a tech company typically will use all of their capital up to do some R&D. We always take Apple, for example. And they do pay a small dividend, but we always got to get the next newest generation iPhone. That's new technology constantly coming our way. So they can't really afford to pay out these massive dividends. On the other hand, you could take a company more like a Procter and Gamble. They have their products. Their products probably aren't going to change. There's not going to be new technology with them. So they get this excess capital. They say, basically, let's thank our shareholders and pay them some money back into your pocket. Now, again, sexy idea in theory, but what do a lot of dividend investors do anyways? Reinvest the dividend. So you're not even going to take that passive income. And if you do decide to take that passive income, you're going to get taxed. So all things just to consider. If you're going to reinvest the dividends, you got a long timeline. I say orient yourself towards growth. That comes again with the caveat of understanding your risk tolerance and volatility. And again, those definitions, what is volatility and what is risk, important to understand as well. I hope I answered that, Keith. Good enough.
For sure, for sure. And then, so when it comes to thinking about some of the other things that might go wrong with dividend investing, one of the things that came to my mind about all of this, I did a video early on my channel where it was like, I said, don't buy dividend stocks. And the whole point of the video was like talking about how when companies are constantly looking for ways to pay their investors, when they're constantly taking their profits and paying their investors, those profits are not necessarily going into growing the business, right? And into reinvesting and growing the business. How do you look at that, or how do you think about also some of the incentives that kind of come around dividends from that perspective? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, well, so again, at these days, I'm not focused on dividends, but
Fair.
coming from the background that I have come from, being insanely excited about dividend investing, and that's what I'm going to say. I didn't know a whole lot about really investing. I started dividend investing. I knew it was safe. Okay, I knew it was going to deliver me passive income. I had this notion of really now what a lot of dividend investors, or I want to say income investors, are super hyped about, which is FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Like that always seems to coincide with the dividend investor mindset. And I totally get it. I have a lot to say about that as well, just like outside of the framework of investing. But if you think for 1 second that life is about sitting on a beach and like la di da da all day, and like you're going to get super bored. So if you're going to go down the route of FIRE, you better also have something else that you're going to want to do, because I think a lot of people forget about that. But that's I guess a topic for another time. Dividend investing, right, and investing into these companies that could be putting their capital to real use. I like to just say it's better off, in my opinion, in the company's pocket than mine. What am I going to do with the capital? I mean, really, what am I going to do with the capital, or what is anybody else going to do with the capital? You're gonna buy your groceries now? Like, I say, hustle hard now. Forget about the dream to retire right now if you have decades to go. I say, add fuel to the fire. Put money into the money machine. Compound your capital. This is the eighth wonder of the world that we're talking about. And so I want to get to the seven-figure club as fast as freaking possible, because then as I get older and as I have less of a timeline on my hands and I don't have as much to risk, I can reorient the portfolio towards dividends. And then with a seven-figure plus portfolio there, we're really talking about, guys, not just receiving like $1.25 or like $26.72. We're talking about hundreds of dollars that you can receive, thousands of dollars that you can receive from a monumentous portfolio. But when you're working with small potatoes, some of these portfolios I've seen that people are like, let's go, dividend investors, it's like $50,000. Not only that, a lot of these guys or gals get super diversified. And I'm a fan of diversification, which is something I could speak to when I changed the entire direction of my portfolio and the strategy there. But so many people have so many holdings. Receiving a 25-cent dividend, is that even exciting? Like I got to ask. It's not exciting to me, but maybe someone else out there can jump in.
Yeah. Well, Keith, I one thing I wanted to say too was that in an age of exponentials that we're entering too, with AI and all these emerging technologies, that like small amounts of money can go a long way in the hands of people who can put it to good use, right? So I think that thesis that you're sharing now matters more than maybe ever in history because of one right decision or one right hire or like all these things, obviously at scale too, it just can just go so crazy. So yeah, I think shifting your approach away from the whole fire movement seems like something that's going to become increasingly more and more relevant. I remember that being super attractive to me like 8 or so years ago. And then when I saw everything starting to like heat up in terms of tech innovation, I was like, I don't think that this will be sustainable with how fast things will move and how fast things will change too. Do you see any sort of do you forecast any sort of major changes from these dividend issuing companies? Because like you said, most of the ones that issue consistent dividends, they've been long-term winners. But as we enter a new era of disruption, is there any chance that the dividends change or go away?
So I don't think that dividends will go away. But what I do foresee happening, of course, with the advent of AI, and I mean, we are just, in my opinion, the very beginning of a
Hmm.
real AI revolution, like the very beginning. And I think that's pretty cool that we're there now. And if we realize the opportunity that's in front of us to be investing more into, these types of growth opportunities, that's where the magic could really happen. You always do your due diligence, right? None of this is financial advice on my behalf. Each and every investor has to do their own research. But the key here is to understand, the classic Wayne Gretzky quote, right? Understand where the puck is going, not where the puck is. And so I don't think in the world that we're living in right now, at the rapid pace that we are progressing technologically, it is impossible for me to even say where we're going to be at the end of this year.
Hmm.
And then you have, Jensen Young talking about a crazy revolution that just last year he was sharing that we're like 5 to 10 years out from, say, like qubits in the quantum computing space, really taking off. And now where we're at today, he's shortened that timeline. You got guys like, of course, Elon Musk. I mean, this is one everybody knows. Um, Tesla's been a thing that's just been hot since ever. But what's hotter now, I think, than the Tesla cars is these robots. Uh, I'm worried in some sense because I want people to be thinking, and I like having intellectual conversations. I like when people shout out to you guys, Ben and Keith, for keeping real conversations fluid and going. I don't think we're having enough of these conversations. I think people are getting too used to chatting with their AI bot, and getting answers. And yeah, I was honest. I'm not even gonna lie, guys. I was watching some Instagram reels just last night, And there was like taking me back to the 90s. And I was just so sentimental. I was sitting here and I had a tear in my eye because it was like, wow, like I remember going to Blockbuster on Friday nights and picking out the movie, and that's just not a thing anymore. And with that, I feel like we've lost the ability to really think for ourselves. I think we're getting weaker there. So on like one end, I'm super excited about AI.
Mhm.
On the other end, I'm worried and I'm curious, but only because I don't want people to stop thinking. I don't want people to be too reliant. I want them to use AI more as support. But yeah, I mean, in a new world, in this new age that we're entering, this is the technology of now and in the future. And so I think if you're stuck on dividend investing, you are just going to miss out on opportunity. And as an investor, like I said, if you're going to classify yourself as a dividend investor, you're going to run into trouble. And classify yourself as an investor. If someone's at that door knocking, open the door. You might not agree with the strategy, but ask questions. See where this other investor is coming from. Does it make sense? Put the thesis together for yourself. Think. Heck, you can maybe even ask ChatGPT, what does it think, right? Start there if you can't think for yourself. But don't write off other strategies, especially when it comes to massive growth opportunities.
Love it, man. So one of the big things that you've done an incredible job of talking about here is constantly as an investor, you're thinking about, hey, uh, do I want to be more focused in on growth or do I want to be more focused in on income? And there's a really good book by a guy named David Swenson. He was previously, he has passed since, may he rest in peace. He was previously the endowment manager for Yale, as well as, I believe, a couple of other big endowments. And so, one of the things that he lays out in a book called Pioneering Portfolio Management is really thinking about as an endowment, you're thinking about how do I prepare for making sure that this endowment continues to grow over time, but that on a yearly basis, we're able to meet our cash flow demands so that I can, pay my employees and all of that and make sure that the school functions. But then also, how do you think about making sure that that amount that you have for a yearly budget is also growing, right? If you're going to have your income, right, you want that income to grow as well. And so, anyways, it's a very powerful read because it helps you to look at what that looks like on an institutional scale when you're managing billions and billions of dollars, when you're thinking about the difference between your income versus your growth. And I think, Art, what you've been pointing out is that, especially also, Ben, you pointed in right now, where a lot of the companies who don't pay dividends, by the way, what they're doing is very aggressively taking the money that they're making and they're investing into the future growth, right? So if you think about the sliders of a scale of like income today versus growth, they're all the way on the growth side. And so if you're playing the game of, oh, well, I'm just going to focus in on the income right now, then you're actually going to be exponentially getting left behind by these companies that are really focusing in on, hey, I'm more worried about that future growth. I want to capture as much of that market as I can. And so with all of that, you just got to keep in mind that not only are you thinking about what's happening with your portfolio and in your circumstances, but what also is happening in the market,
Mhm.
because eventually you'll miss out on all of this growth. And then Ari also said, hey, if I do the growth part while I'm young, well, now by the time that I'm older, I've participated in all of the compounding of the growth that I get from being there. And then I can think about, oh, well, now I can just rotate my portfolio into these dividends at a much higher clip, at a much higher level than it would have been if I had just been sitting in these dividends that entire time. So I just wanted to try to illustrate fully kind of what's happening with that.
100%, Keith. I mean, I think, it's as you were talking, I'm thinking about the days like when we would go to a theme park and at like, our teenage years. I mean, maybe you guys can still handle roller coasters, but my stomach at this point and my neck and my back, I'm like, I went to Disney in France with my ex and like, it was just like, whoa, like I went on one roller coaster. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I'm bringing that up because at a young age, in my teenage years, I could do the roller coasters and that was fine. I could get whipped around. And so what I'm saying here is like at a young age, you can afford to get whipped around when it comes to your portfolio. As a younger investor, you have the long timeline. You can afford to enjoy the ebbs and flows of the market. Once you are older, it's not gonna feel good to get whipped around. You're gonna be terrified. I would be. Now you're really talking about this shortened timeline before retirement that you can't afford to mess around there. And so you're gonna feel nauseous, right? It's not gonna feel great. Again, go back to that younger investor. You can do it. You have that long runway. So you might as well enjoy that growth opportunity that you could take now. And that's really how I would look at it. And this passive income, dream that everyone's looking to live, maybe, I'm harsh on this, but I tend to be, and I'm going to be direct in saying this. Like, I think society is getting lazier, and that's not a good thing. I think it's okay that, like, most Americans don't like their job, and that probably extrapolates out to, like, a lot of people around the world not loving their job. But then go find something you want to do. There has never been an easier time to win than right freaking now, because everybody is so freaking weak to your left and to your right. And if this is resonating with anybody out there, like, just recognize it has never been easier to win. To have a go-getter attitude. Find one or two things that you're super passionate about. Attack it like there's nothing else. Go get a job that interests you, that you're passionate about. Make the money from it. Overload the portfolio with absolutely everything you can into growth opportunities while you can, and then transition the portfolio later in your later years when you can't afford to take on that risk and growth.
Totally. And I also think that with all the tools that we have at our disposal, risk can come in different forms. And so if you're listening to this and you are older than say like a teenager or in your 20s, risk can come in different ways, and you can still get exponential return on your time investment if you're using the right tools, right? Like we talked about AI, we talked about social media. The timelines for things have become so shortened. Like, you can consume what most people would get in an entire 4-year degree. And if you really wanted to lock in, you could probably get that done in a few months. Like, that's actually possible now. And so the note that I wrote down while you were talking, Ari, was that to do the things that you actually want to do, you typically have to start by doing the things you don't. Right. So it's like it's researching in the places where most people aren't spending their time and getting off of the doom scrolling. And because a lot of people will convince themselves they're being productive because, let's say, they're watching investment content on Instagram, but you got to understand the incentive structure of the creator on the other side of the screen. He is trying to captivate, or she or they are trying to captivate, a cold audience every single time. So chances are they don't actually care that much about the subject matter on each independent video. They care about how many views it gets. And so that's another thing too, I would say, is that go where most people aren't. So where do you typically get your information to make your own investment theses? Because I think people get asked that question to Keith and I all the time. So I'd be super curious where you go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I stay off of social media. That's for sure. I don't take any, but, like, I don't listen. First
Good
of all,
idea.
I don't like listening to other financial creators because I never want to steal ideas. That's a big thing. Podcast is a different story, like this, because it's open conversation. But I could tell you this. I think if you are using, whether it's YouTube or TikTok, or, you just have to be extremely careful, like, who you're getting the suggestions from. And then, more importantly, once you get the suggestions, really do your own research. So I don't use any social for anything. I keep my head on the swivel. I listen in to what's going on in the world. I operate like a CEO. Like, whether or not I had a full-time job or not, this is how I've been operating for years now, and I continue to operate this way. So I have, certain icons within the industry that I really respect, look up to. And I'll just give you an example. I will take Bill Ackman or Monish Pabrai, and, Larry Ellison, or, any of these intelligent minds. And I ask myself a very simple question: what do they do on a day-to-day basis? Well, they probably aren't waking up at 8:30 a.m. ever. Like Jeff Bezos. What do you think Jeff's doing at, like, on a Tuesday at 4 a.m.? He's up. The guy's up. He's doing something. He's reading. He's typically, a lot of these guys, Warren Buffett will read newspaper after newspaper. So I started to do that years ago. I keep my head, like I said, on a swivel. I want to know what's going on in the world and how that's going to impact all of you. Because if there's something, like, right now, Iran and oil and all of these headlines scaring a lot of people. So where do you think the market's at right now? In the red. And that's a great day for me. And when you keep understanding, like, I studied, history and economics. And so when you understand history, it really does repeat itself. Not it doesn't repeat itself in like the same exact event. I hate when people go like, oh, it's just like the Great Depression. No, it's not. It's an entirely different event. And there's different factors that go into, you know, different events. Like '08 was not the Great Depression, but people had that comparison then. Because it's a scare tactic. And having worked at tip ranks, by the way, I get the headlines, right? I used to create them. It's all fear based. So you want to get out of the fear mindset. Keep your head on the swivel and understand just human psychology. That's where understanding current events becomes super interesting. And then when you start to take a look at current events, oh, the Iran war is going on. What's that going to do to oil? And oh, if that's going to impact oil, what oil companies are out there, potential investments? Now, if you're into technology, play the same game. It's funny. You can go back to Trump's inauguration. Whatever you think about the guy, I don't care. I hate when people bring politics into this. Just any president who ever talks to any CEO ever, why are they at the White House? At Trump's inauguration, every tech CEO was there, like all of them. And so what do you think is going to happen in the term under Trump for the next, now 3 more years? Well, all of these guys, right? The government started investing massively into AI and quantum computing. So like have your head in the swivel. That's where the ideas for me come from. But for people who do want to use influencers, some influencers are in fact paid by the companies, whether it's the ETF firm that wants them to pump their ETFs out there, or it's the company. So you just really have to be careful. And not every influencer actually shares that on their channels. So like
Yeah.
take what they say for a grain of salt, use your head, and then ask yourself, like, again, what would Warren Buffett do? What would Jeff
Mhm.
Bezos do? Would they get a tip off from YouTube? Probably not, probably not.
Totally. And
Good
here's
point.
a timely post from Mark Andreessen, who was talking about his consumption diet as of late. And so he breaks it down into 4 different quadrants. And the first of which is X, or Twitter. And I would still say, before you do that, determining who's worth following on Twitter is very important. Obviously, he's curated his feed quite a bit. 1/4 podcast interviews, like Ari said, and then a quarter talking to leading AI models, so talking directly to Chat GPT, and then a quarter reading old books. So this tweet's gone very viral. It got 33.8 million views over the past week or so, because the consumption matters, because your consumption shapes your existence. And so I think not enough people are auditing that, and I think a lot of people are asking themselves questions and feeling stuck just because they're stuck in the same place.
Keith, Ben, are you familiar with Monish Pabrai?
Very,
I'm not.
very slightly. And Ben, I had the video of that one pulled up too, for Mark Andreessen. But I
Awesome.
think I only know about him because of
Yeah,
My
yeah.
First Million.
Yes, yeah. My First Million. They coined him as the Indian Warren Buffett or whatever it was.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So I have fallen in love with Monish so much so I wrote him an email. I actually got a response back from him. So
that's
there's a
awesome.
lot to even say about that. Man, I got a million stories I could share. So I'm trying to run through like which was going to be most pertinent for the listener. But so I got this. He dubs himself as like the master copier. He literally he calls himself a shameless cloner. And so I'm bringing this up because so many people will say like, oh, yeah, like Warren Buffett or like investing like Warren Buffett or Peter Lynch. But then when you actually look at their portfolios, you look at their strategies, you look at how they've been finding investment opportunities, it's nothing like Warren Buffett. It's nothing like Charlie Munger or Peter Lynch. So Monish Pabrai, comes around. This guy was a nobody essentially in the finance industry, and becomes a somebody, all because he shamelessly cloned Warren Buffett's strategy. And that's literally finding good companies that are insanely undervalued and investing into them and then waiting. He doesn't use spreadsheets. He's not running, like looking at fine tuning enough so to use a calculator. Warren Buffett goes through books, right, to find his investment ideas. So just think about like who do you look up to within the industry? Go research who they read their biographies, understand how they think. Once you understand how successful people think, you can it's okay to copy them. Like it's okay, like Monish would say, it's just shamelessly clone them because it works. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can literally find the strategy from your icon
Mm.
and then start using their strategies or using, where they look. So I saw even underneath the tweet that you guys pulled up there, Bill Ackman had commented on that. Well,
Hmm.
if you're a fan of Bill Ackman, his portfolio has less than 10 holdings in it. So why does yours have 30 or 40? If that's your idol within the industry, you got to start asking deeper questions. And,
So
and that's what I think a lot of us fail to do.
who do you look up to in the industry?
Bill Ackman. Bill
Bill Ackman.
Ackman. I'm a big fan of Bill Ackman. Like I said, Monish Pabrai. That's rather recent. I am, of course, a Buffett guy, but even more so a Charlie Munger guy. I think I'm
Me
more
too.
like Charlie than Warren. I think I'm just very direct. Could be intimidating, but I think he just had it right. He was dialed in. He wasn't afraid to really voice his opinion and hurt feelings. And so I have to say those three. So again, Monish Pabrai, Bill Ackman, and Charlie Munger.
Great names there. And I've read like anything that Charlie writes, definitely try to read. So definitely, like if you guys are gonna pick books to read, a lot of people don't like books because they haven't had one that gave them like a breakthrough moment in their actual life. And so if you're a little more selective about who you pick to read about, that can definitely help that. And Charlie Munger, there's what's the one that I'm referring to that I'm thinking of?
Poor Charlie's almanac.
I think that is it. Yes, definitely. Yes, it is. Go. Yes, that is absolutely it. I'll show you guys on the screen, but I definitely recommend going to pick this book up. Talks a lot about how he approaches problems and how he thinks, and then also incentive structures too. Right, this book right here. I definitely recommend picking that up because a lot of it we do overcomplicate it, and a lot of it comes down to people thinking that more advice is always better, right? And so that's also one of the biggest problems with short form social media in particular is that you're getting so many people's advice, and most people should not be giving advice. That's just like the cold hard truth of it. But they figured out a way that they could package this advice that would get people to watch it, and so then in turn, that people. Our natural priming is okay, social proof. Enough people watch this, it must be good. I promise you, as somebody who has studied social media for 10 years, it is the opposite. If something has a lot of views, chances are the advice is not that good in most cases, especially if it's like something really like deeper. Chances are if they could get everyone to understand it, it's probably not as profound as they're trying to convince you that it is.
That's such a great point, and it really highlights who the content creator is trying to touch, the
Mm-hmm.
masses. And when you are the viewer, I don't know about anybody else out there, but when I was younger and I was watching, like Andre Jick, I think is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
He's in that like little closet space, and like it just feels like it's you and him, and he's talking to you. Graham Stefan does the same type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels so just one on one, and then you get what they're saying. You're like, oh, great idea. Okay, I'll do that. The problem with that is that video is seen by like thousands upon thousands of people, millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so would an investment advisor just grab a mic and say, hey, everybody, buy this? No,
No.
that's actually illegal. You can't even do that. I mean, you get fined up the wazoo if you did that. So you have to figure out, regulation BI, regulation best interest. Who's in front of you? What's their profile? What's their timeline? What's their risk appetite? I mean, everything. There's so many questions that go into that.
Mm-hmm.
So creators, I'm like the most fearful of for viewers. I just want to say, go find your icon and then listen to everything they say. Watch, every video, read the books. If you don't like reading, start to like reading because I can't say that enough. Find yourself diving into the depths of your idol's brain
Mm-hmm.
and shamelessly clone them, and you will see results.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the point that you made there about read whatever books they mentioned too is so huge because if you look up to someone and they deemed that a book was worth reading and still say that after the fact, like that is a massive like signal direction that you should definitely follow down. I'd love to get really practical. So a lot of people, even that watch a lot of investing content, like they haven't even really started investing. So, what is like the legitimate 0 to 1? Like, do they go to the bank? Do they act like they've never heard of investing before? How do they start and build a routine that actually gets them to the point where they can explore their freedoms and figure out what they love? Because I think most people are just in survival mode. So even like the topics you're saying conceptually, they can understand it. But I think until they have a little bit of freedom financially or see it moving that direction, they like it's kind of a different language.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So first of all, what I always share with everybody is if you don't know, if you're not already operating like a CEO, then start. I don't know a single CEO who doesn't know what's going on in the world. I don't know a single CEO who doesn't pay attention to things that are happening around them. I don't know a single CEO who is just kind of not even unsure of where their money's coming from. I think that's 90% of people out there who are struggling. They don't know how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. So track that. And if you track your income, your cash flow and expenditures for just 14 days, 2 weeks, you will be amazed and shocked at the same time. One, at how much came in, but then shocked at like, how did that disappear? And why did it disappear on like, all these little impromptu impulse expenditures? You will immediately tighten up just because you're like, that was such a stupid purchase. I
Mm.
don't want to do that again. You'll start to see in that area that you can start to save. And if you can save $10 and then just invest the $10, $1 a day, it really is that simple to start. If you are in debt, I do want to say that you should really, really conquer the debts first, because you got certain, depending on what the debt is, right? Not all debt is bad, but typically with the investors we're probably speaking to, it's probably bad debt. If it's like credit card debt and that interest is probably 23%, 22% plus, and the market's going to return based on what you're investing in. If it's just the S&P 500, it's about 10% on average per year. I mean, you do the math. So you want to handle your debt. But if you don't have debt or you're working on your debt, stop with the Starbucks coffee. You don't need it every day. Treat yourself once or twice a week if you want, but start to take money, open up a brokerage account, and put fractional shares you can buy today into a broad market fund. The S&P 500 is fantastic. Just start there. Start building what I like to call the investment foundation. And that is, what my portfolio is built on. An investment foundation. I'd say if you can get that baby up to like 10,000 before exploring anything else, you're going to be in really good shape. And you're not going to have to worry, because investing in the S&P or even a broader fund than the S&P, what you're really building with that foundation is security. And knowing that, the 500 largest companies in America aren't going to disappear by Tuesday. Uh, you know, so you have that luxury to build that up. You can get comfortable. You can start reading, watching how the portfolio does on a day to day, on a week to week, on a month to month, because it's going to take you a moment to get to 10,000. And from there, you can then say, okay, I want to dabble in an individual stock, maybe, or maybe I like how this thing with the S&P is going, or I want to try a more growth oriented ETF. You build on top of the foundation.
Makes total sense.
Love it, man. What are your thoughts on leverage and stuff? Like, what mistakes do you see people making with leverage? Do you think people should avoid it, or how do you look at that concept? What does it even really mean? What is leverage in terms of investing and whatnot?
Right. What's the classic Charlie quote? Like, it's what we need to look out for: liquor, leverage, and women.
Yeah.
so, so watch out for the big three. But using leverage in layman's terms, it's just money that you don't have. So, and I want to keep it that simple, because yes, you could go down the rabbit hole of using it, and yes, it's not bad if you really know what you're doing. But again, where it becomes, I think, very dangerous and dicey is when investors don't know what they're doing. And for the vast majority of investors, that's the deal. I'll give you a really good example. A lot of ETFs these days are leveraged funds. They play options there on the underlying holding. And in the prospectus that no one ever reads, it says that these funds are reset daily. That's a big deal because you got a lot of investors with the notion of, I will buy this and hold it. And so what you're watching then is your money going down the drain. Yes, it may pay you, I don't know, an 80% yield return of capital, right? But then at the underlying is just losing, and over time you're just watching your money go down the drain, and then you're getting paid in your own dollar, right? Like none of it makes sense. But that is because it is reset daily. It's for trading activity. So I think if we take a step back, Keith, again, and really talk about like what's your goal and what's your strategy to accomplish that goal. A lot of the times people will go to the gym and they don't just, some people do. I used to run gyms as well. They just go to the gym, they start throwing weights around. They have no real strategy. Well, those people typically, is like the New Year's people. They're out within a month. But without the plan, you're going to give up. Without your strategy, you're going to give up. So the people who do go to the gym and actually have, the wherewithal to know what they're going to be doing while they're there, they will see results. And you then need to arm yourself with what type of strategies before you even enter the market that you're going to use. So if it's going to be day trading, that's cool. Like I know that a lot of people don't like the day traders. I love day traders. If that works for them, that's great. I love dividend investors if that works for them. But know what you're doing, because the market is going to flip-flop every other day, every other moment, and you got to be comfortable with what you're doing. So using leverage, aka again, the money that you don't have really, could be really dangerous when everything goes awry, the underlying holding tanks, and you're just holding the bag like, oh crap. you know? So again, I'm not opposed to using leverage. I'm not opposed to options. But you have to know what you're doing.
Fair, man. One of the things that I've noticed that I feel like people are constantly trying to do is trying to find a way to increase their returns in the market. And I like to lay out there's kind of three ways to look at how to have success with investing, three levers that you can pull. The first lever that everyone wants to focus on is my percent returns on a yearly basis, right? So people go into debt, they'll take on all this leverage to try to find a way to get 20, 30% returns. The second thing is, well, how much money are you actually putting into the markets? And this is what I call the second lever. And this is the one that I think that really people should really try to focus in on and pull and increase to as much as they possibly can. And then the third lever is just the time. Like how long are you exposing yourself to the growth that the engines of the markets is going to allow you to participate in? How do you look at that kind of an equation? Do you think that the income piece is important? If so, how do you think about how to increase income or yeah, just in general, what do you think about that?
Such a great question. I agree with the levers that you're pulling. Now, let me say that first. I couldn't have said it any better myself. So, what I will say is the hardest thing any man or woman has to do is nothing, is be patient. So you have to get really good, as they say, at watching paint dry if you want to be a successful investor. That's the last lever that you mentioned, which is patience and time. And I don't think, especially today, people have that. And so I think we really cut ourselves short. Now, you can't train that in the markets. I think you need to train that just on like an individual personal level. Like, look at how quickly we react to everything. We get a text message and it's like, gotta answer now. It's like, just breathe, breathe. And so a trick that I always implement, I lead teams and I just have a lot of fun, man. I doing a lot of different things in life. But one thing that I have found that works so well, no matter what comes my way, just take a moment to breathe. Okay. A text message comes in, it throws me off. I'm about to make an investment decision, right? Like, what is happening in the immediate world that's around me right now? Do I need to react right now? Do I need to say something right now? And when you slow down, you can practice patience. That goes a long way in the market. The other two levers, talk income is incredibly important. And I would say that when it comes to income, we've never been living in an easier era to make excess capital. You can jump on YouTube. You can create a YouTube channel. It's going to take work. None of what I'm saying here is a get rich quick by Tuesday thing. It's going to take work, but you can knit, I don't know, mittens or gloves or whatever, and just like sell them on Etsy. Like I never stopped working since the age of 8, 7, 8 years old. I did everything. I walked dogs. I waxed cars. I cut lawns. I shoveled driveways in the winter. I sold ice creams in school or candies. Then I, got older, became a pizza delivery boy. I was a waiter. I then became a firefighter. I just was always working, always. And all along the way as well, it was always these little odds and end jobs that I was doing when I had time, which is all the time. I had a lot of freaking time, and so I think everybody has a lot of freaking time. And it's what do you want out of life? People don't ask themselves that question. I want to travel. So I make sure that everything that I do orients around traveling. But, even when I lived in Manhattan, I'll say this, Manhattan has a lot of furniture that's thrown out like every other block, every other day. I used to go out there. I had a great 6-figure job. So I don't want anybody to think like, oh, that's for lower Joe Schmo over there. I was earning 6 figures, and going out there, walking the streets at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night and looking for furniture, bring it home. I'd either fix it and flip it, sell it, or most of the time I didn't even need to do that. I just sold it. That was bringing me an extra few $1,000s a month. Gary Vaynerchuk does a great job of going to like garage sales and doing the same thing. So you're going to be one of 3 types of people. You're going to make things happen, you're going to watch things happen, or you're going to be someone who says, what the heck just happened? You got to decide which person you are. I am not in, that tier of what the heck just happened. I'm not going to watch things happen. I'm going to make things happen. Decide who you want to be and then go attack it. And so you can generate more income. I have plenty of people as well that always chime in and they're like, well, I have, kids and the wife and this and this. Okay. It's called prioritization. Sit down with them. Say, I want to make sure the family gets here. I believe every father has an obligation to be a provider, a protector, and a teacher. It's time to step up. And so there's no more excuses in this. I don't see Jeff Bezos or Jamie Dimon or any of these guys making the excuses, right? I can't think like that. I guess this is where I get intense and direct. People are like, whoa, man, but this is my life.
Wait, what you just finished watching was only part 1 of this highlight from our live show Memes and Markets, where we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. But this conversation gets even better. Hit that like button and subscribe and click here to watch the second part of this highlight.